Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing the kind of polarizing new Marvel film, Thor, Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi. Thor Love and Thunder is a 2022 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics featuring the character Thor, produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It is the sequel to Thor Ragnarok, the kind of heavy metal 80s themed, uh, kind of a reboot of the character of Thor, also directed by Taika Waititi, and was one of my favorite movies of the year, of 2017. But it is also one of my favorite movies of the MCU as well, just from the stylistic flair, the originality, the tonal shifts between it being an action comedy, but also having some dramatic beats sprinkled in there. But overall, I thought it worked really well. Um, so Thor: Love and Thunder is the sequel to Thor Ragnarok, and the 29th and is the 29th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU. The film is directed by Taika Waititi, who co-wrote the script with Jennifer Caton Robinson, um, and stars Chris Hemsworth as Thor, alongside Christian Bale, Tessa Thompson, Jamie Alexander, Waititi, uh, Russell Crowe, and Natalie Portman. In the film, Thor attempts to find inner peace, but must return to action and recruit Valkyrie, who's played by Tessa Thompson, Korg, who's voiced by Waititi, and Jane Foster, who um, I guess now I'm going to say it's on the poster, so it's not really a spoiler, but Jane Foster comes back, who is now the mighty Thor, to stop Gore, the God Butcher, played by Bale, from eliminating the gods. And so I do want to kind of get some things off my chest before we get into this a little bit more nitty gritty. Yes, I've seen the first Thor. I have not seen the polarizing or kind of downright shat on Thor: The Dark World, which was the second movie, featuring Chris Hemsworth as well, and Jane Foster returning. And from what I hear, it's just flat out boring and doesn't really move the plot too much, with the exception of the small scenes that we see in the Avengers, I think Infinity War or Endgame, where they go back and have to steal a time stone, or is it one of the Infinity Stones from Jane Foster, I believe, or somebody. Um, my brain's a little bit jumbled with what the details were, why that we had to go back there. But anyways, just was saying that Thor is a fun character after the Shakespearean take they had in the first Thor, and I believe the second one kind of went on that same route. But there was also the whole Loki of it all, played by Tom Hiddleston, who was who plays his brother in the movie, and he has he's nefarious and quippy in all the ways that we love our villains to be. So we don't have that Tom Hiddleston energy in this. We have a little bit more different energy than what we've had. Um, More of the comedic realm of the Ragnarok style. It is marketed like it's going to be kind of like this He-Man ultra ultra masculine kind of rock out kind of film, but I kind of don't really feel like that's what this movie turned out to be. This movie kind of is trying to sell that through all the marketing and the posters and the Guns N' Roses soundtrack of it all, which is playing constantly throughout the film. But with saying that, I think that it's more or less uh it's not quite a gimmick, but it's way the 80s theme is way more of a facade than it is um an actual influence of the movie in comparison to the Ragnarok film. So Hemsworth and Taika Waititi had discussed plans for a sequel to Ragnarok by January 2018. Love and Thunder was announced in July 2019, and Hemsworth, Waititi, and Thompson were all set to return, as well as Portman, who did not appear in Ragnarok. Um, Taika Waititi wanted to differentiate Love and Thunder from Ragnarok, seeking to make a romance film and 1980s inspired adventure. Now, there's blends of that, but I don't think that cohesively that's not what this movie is. He adapted elements from Jason Aaron's run on the Mighty Thor comic, which sees Jane Foster take on the mantle and powers of Thor, what's suffering from uh, a disease. I don't want to say what it is yet until we get to the spoilers. Um, Robinson continued to contribute to the script in February 2020, and further casting was revealed later that year, including the appearance of Guardians of the Galaxy. As we've seen, how the end of Endgame was resulting, and how all of these movies have been kind of spinning off into their own storylines. Well, Thor ran off with the Guardians of the Galaxy, so they kind of have to do something about, addressing where he's been, what they've been doing, and so. Production was expected to begin in late 2020, but was delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Filming ultimately began in January 2021 in Sydney, Australia, and concluded at the beginning of June. Thor Love and Thunder premiered at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood on June 23rd, 2022, and was released in the United States on July 8th as part of Phase 4 of the MCU. The film received praise from the critics for its lighthearted nature and the cast performances, which both of those generally fall within the MCU blend of having some of the best casting in most franchises that they've had. This is no different, considering Thor is and these characters are from kind of the old MCU, the OGs, the Iron Man, the Captain Americas, the Hulks of it all. He's from the the first round of Avengers. And so, yeah, the lighthearted nature, the performances, but on the other hand, the screenplay and tonal inconsistencies um, received criticism. Thor: Love and Thunder has grossed $329 million worldwide, becoming the 10th highest grossing film of 2022, and probably going to make its way up the charts as well. It is brought the cinematographer is Barry Iodine. I went back and looked, and he is a cinematographer on the Mandalorian series, starting all the way back from I think the first season, and then coming back for the second season as well. Um, there was some good stuff using the fancy. I know that they have like special green screen uh, that they use for Star Wars, and they also have the same type of green screen technology for the MCU as well. So there's some good, some not so good. Sometimes you can just blatantly tell they're standing in front of a green screen of some sort. So so far it's made 329 million worldwide on a budget of $250 million, which is pretty sizable. I'll be honest. That's a chunky movie. But I have heard that there is a large section of this movie that is on the cutting room floor. So I am curious what the original cut of this was, considering the the villain does not feel all that villainous. Let me retract that. Christian Bale does an amazing job at just about any performance he's given. Gore the God Butcher is no different, and I hear that the comics are a lot more, ironically, gorier, more violent than what we received in the movie. As a matter of fact, through the movie, he's only in a handful of scenes, and I don't think his true villainous potential is really shown in this film, or if it was, then it was cut on the cutting room floor. I do feel like there's probably another cut of this movie that blends these two tones a little bit better, because ultimately this movie is supposed to be kind of a romantic comedy, but it's wrapped in this uh, action comedy that's just way overbearing in it, and they're still trying to juggle some really uh, heavy plot lines um, within this film. Like the storylines are really serious, but they might undercut it with a joke here and there. And it's not just here and there, it's almost every time we're on to the next scene. Right after we have a dramatic scene, we're cutting right to a joke. So I can definitely see how people have issues with the tonal shifts in this, and it's just not blending very smoothly. Um, with a running time of 120 minutes, what that's just about 2 hours. Um, it is it it is kind of obvious that they're trying to hit that 2 hour mark. However, I believe this is one of the few times that I would say that we need more time, both on the supporting cast characters as well as the antagonist characters, to kind of give them a better backstory about what we should be expecting and understanding, and giving them pathos and ethos, and basically understanding the motivations of these characters. So let me go through my notes real quick about this movie. This movie has entertaining action, and that's no different than the Ragnarok of it all. I do feel like the Ragnarok, um, the blocking and the way that the cinematography encapsulated the action, it felt very operatic and Shakespearean, and kind of godlike, and almost a little bit more like I don't want to say evoke the name because everyone's going to get me for it, but a little bit more like Zack Snydery in the way that they're positioning the panels of the comic books, and of how they position the characters like comic books. Um, Ragnarok felt like you could take frames of that film and put it on your wall, and it would look amazing. I didn't feel that with Thor: Love and Thunder. I kind of felt like it was a little bit more. Saying it's thrown together sounds like it's lazy. There's nothing about this. Probably thousands of people have worked on this film. There's nothing about this that is considerably lazy. It's just the discombobulation of different parts trying to fit on the screen all at one time. So many different colors. Um, it I like my I like it to feel kind of symmetrical. I know that's not exactly what you're going to get with all films, but I do feel like the symmetricality of the way that the the action was shot in Ragnarok was so much more interesting and eye capturing than most than most MCU movies. Like the Ragnarok itself was, it just hit such a high bar of wow, the music cues always coming in, then ding digga ding digga ding digga ding, like it felt like it had pacing that came into the different types of music that was coming in, and yeah, like I felt like we were doing Guns N' Roses click play every couple scenes, and it was just like, all right, it's a fight scene, so play Guns N' Roses or something like that. Like I didn't feel the pacing and the fun like they normally have with the other MCU movies that are kind of music based, with like Guardians of the Galaxy, or I hear a lot of people reviewers comparing this movie to Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where it's kind of a little bit of a jumbled mess, but it still has that kind of splashy, over saturated screen. But I do got to say, there are some really interesting pieces of I know I'm going to kind of go back on what I said, that the cinematography wasn't up to snuff, that it wasn't symmetrical enough for me. But I do got to say that there are bits and pieces of scenes of like Gore the God Butcher having Christian Bale, pointing or something like that, or um, almost anything, any scene with Natalie Portman, I felt like worked really well when she's in the Mighty Thor outfit and everything. She looks the part, and it's amazing how ripped and big and amazing she looks, and then she still looks like she's got this glow on the top with her hair kind of coming out and everything. I was like, Jesus, I want to see about 4 movies with her. Okay, so um we'll talk about that a little bit more into the spoiler section, but yeah, so like I said, the action is on par. It's not the most revolutionary action you've seen, but it's entertaining for Marvel. um the casting's always really well. It's really hard to find for me casting in the MCU that I'm like, they're not bringing it. It's normally on the script side that they just haven't. If there is someone that's not bringing it in the MCU, normally it's the script is underserving them. But just about even from movies to TV, I think both sides, you get really good casting for the MCU. So let's get into the cons. I know I've kind of been jumbling back and forth, but I've also been trying to talk in a non-spoiler sense. We're going to get into the spoilers here very soon. So here are the cons and the non-spoiler section. Like everyone has said, tonally, it's all over the place, and I have seen this across the board from Twitter, from YouTube, from my friends. I've kind of been checking around to see what everyone's thinking, and I do think that um, tonally it is all over the place. There's a lot going on, and there's not enough time to develop some of the more serious plot aspects of this film. Let me see. Yeah, which goes into the Mighty Thor and the Gore plot lines are underdeveloped. Some of the drama over some of the drama in the film is overshadowed by the comedy that almost instantly happens. And I got to say that I like Taika Waititi's general sense of comedy. Normally his comedy is not quite as situational as what I call it, but I've been following him for a few years as a director. I really in Jojo Rabbit was on my top 10 of 2019 that year. Thor Ragnarok 2017, one of my favorites of that year. And he didn't write Thor Ragnarok, though. I didn't realize that. That was written by Eric Pearson, Craig Kyle, and Christopher L. Yost. Um, I didn't realize Taika Waititi didn't write Ragnarok. But anyways, I really enjoyed the year before that with Waititi's Hunt for the Wilder People. He wrote, directed, and produced that. And a lot of people have talked about What We Do in the Shadows with Jermaine Clement. And I think that has a television show now. And I haven't seen the 2010s Boy, and I have not seen the Eagle versus Shark. Um, but a lot of YTT heads have been following them for quite a long time, since television's '07 through '09's Flight of the Concorde. I haven't seen Super City. I've heard a little bit about the In-Betweeners, but I haven't heard about Wellington Paranormal. And like I said, What We Do in the Shadows in 2019. He's directed some of The Mandalorian on television, Reservoir Dogs 2021. I'm not sure whether he was a writer on that. And Our Flag Means Death, he was a director on that as well. He's done a couple of shorts as well as his extensive acting career. I'm not going to go through everything, but he was in anything from a lot of the things I just mentioned above in the television and film realm. He's also acted in. He was in the Green Lantern. So he was in Thor Ragnarok's Korg again, and Korg's coming back in this movie. We also have, he has pretty an extensive, yeah, he has a pretty extensive acting career, even though he's acted, directed. He's done a whole bunch of stuff. He was in this year's or last year he was in Suicide Squad, Free Guy, Deadpool. So that was a short promotional, but Lightyear this year, and then of course Thor: Love and Thunder. So the dude is getting paid, back, front and back of the camera. So um, let me see. All righty, everyone. So this is the part where we are going to drop everybody off that is a non-Patreon member or um, anyone that's not supporting the Luck It Out podcast on certain platforms. But anyways, you can go to luckitout.podcast.com for the full review. You're going to get a condensed review on YouTube, SoundCloud, and all the other public podcasting platforms. For the full review, you'll get it on patreon.com/LuckyDog podcast, where we're going to go into the full extensive review of Thor: Love and Thunder. But anyways, I'd give this film a 6 out of 10